Welcome back to America's Hope. Someone who knows firsthand what Iran's regime is actually pushing in the narrative of hating America as well as Israel is Lana Silk. She is the head of Transform Iran, and some incredible uh, outcomes have taken place because of Transform Iran. Lana, good of you to join us this hour. So good to talk to you again and to see you again.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be an important conversation, I think, that we're about to have.
I'd like you to do an examination, if you will, of what we're seeing on the streets of America, particularly on our college campuses, with people chanting death to Israel, death to America, pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas. What is going on?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that's the question on all of our minds. What is going on? I can't even really believe it, having been brought up in a country that was so hateful and surrounded by propaganda and the constant drive to have us chant things like this and want things like this, and then having effectively been freed of that to come to a country like America and see the same thing playing out on the streets here. I really can't believe it myself. Um, I think people like to get behind a cause and they like to get excited about things. They like to fight what they feel is control and authoritarianism. And so they have got it in their heads that this is the way to do it. And, you know, the governments of Israel and America must be brought down because they're bringing so much pain to the world. I mean, it's simply not true. I mean, well, I suppose you could say it's true to an extent, but if you're going to push that agenda, you should say that every government in the world brings a degree of authoritarianism, control, pain, because every government in the world has difficult choices to make. I'm struggling to answer your question, Kelly, because I really don't understand why people can get up in the streets and make chants like this and think that what they want is, think what they're asking for is what they really want. I would like to see that play out and see how that goes.
Well, and that leads me to my next question, because you witnessed this in Iran as a child in Iran, you and your family. You witnessed people doing the same thing when the Iranian hostages situation was unfolding. That meant American hostages being held captive in Iran, a total regime change from the Shah to the Ayatollah Khomeini. And people were chanting for this. They wanted this: death to America, death to America, death to America. What
Yes,
happened there?
and even since then, so the people took to the streets under the illusion, the same thing that's playing out here in the US, under the illusion that their government is not doing right by them, is making mistakes, it needs to come down, they have a better way. And for them, the better way was Islam, and they wanted to bring the Ayatollahs and change the regime. And they succeeded in that effort. And then for 45 years, the government in Iran has been making the school children of Iran, I was one of them, stand in the schoolyard and shout, death to America, death to Israel, every day. That's how the school day started. So the government has definitely worked hard to breed that kind of hatred and sentiment. And yet you look back a couple of years ago when all of the protests were happening in Iran as a result of Mahsa Amini's death and all of the horrendous just the details that came to surface for how the government was treating the women after they were arrested when their hijab wasn't worn as the government had wanted. And the same people who have grown up their whole lives, anyone under the age of 45 has grown up their whole lives in Iran, shouting at school, death to America, death to Israel, surrounded by propaganda on street murals. They were in the streets in Iran shouting death to the dictator. So after decades of brainwashing and an attempt to have a whole generation hate Israel and hate America, that same generation hates their own government and wants its downfall. I think we can learn something by looking at that.
If only people would listen to your story, which is a true account and portrayal of what happened, you as a child growing up there along with your family, and you were in danger as well, as I understand it, you and your entire family, because of your Christian belief. How did that go over in Iran that is saying death to Israel, death to Jews, death to America, death to Christians.
Yes, the danger to us personally wasn't as great as it would have been now if we were still there. It was increasing by the time we left. The government was beginning to squeeze on any religious expression that wasn't Islam, but particularly Christians, who were the biggest threat as far as the Iranian regime is concerned. For 10 years after the revolution in 1979, Iran was entangled in a war with Iraq. So their attentions were elsewhere in dealing with that. In 1988, when that war ended, then Iran turned internally, the authorities, I should say, turned internally and started to focus on some of the cleanup, that they would probably call it, that they were busy with in trying to bring in an authentically Islamic nation into effect. And that's when it became more and more dangerous to be a Christian in Iran.
Yeah. So what's your message to the people who are protesting on college campuses, and among them are women protesting on college campuses for against Israel, against America, and actually protesting in favor of Hamas and the Palestinians?
Well, I think we need to separate Hamas and Palestinians right off the bat there. So I sympathize with people who are anxious for the welfare of the Palestinian people and want peace for the Palestinian people, want aid right now for the Palestinian people. That is a totally different kind of protest to want Hamas to succeed. Hamas is not the same as the Palestinian people. We must understand that. And to the same fact, not Iranians and the Iranian regime are not the same thing. So we have to have the intelligence and the understanding to separate these things from each other and understand what we're actually saying. So when we're taking to the streets and shouting in favor of Hamas, do we really understand the ideology of Hamas? Particularly women, I would question, go and study, go and learn how Hamas treats women, go and learn how Islamic theocracies treat their women. And ask yourself, is that what you really want? By all means, protest for the welfare of the Palestinians, want peace, advocate for the downtrodden, but asking for Hamas to succeed is an entirely different thing.
You run a program called Transform Iran. In that role, what is the objective of Transform Iran?
Well, really, it's what it says right from the beginning. It's transformation for Iran. And it's the same as what we've been talking about, understanding what the people of Iran need and deserve, perhaps, over just talking about a regime here. The people of Iran, 88 million people in Iran, are struggling under the same regime that is now attacking Israel, instigating war, instigating hatred. That same regime is against its own people and constantly brutalizing, oppressing their people. We want transformation for our country. We want freedom for our country. We are Christians. We believe the answer to so many of these struggles is Jesus Christ, but we would still not want to control our people and by force bring in a different regime, even a Christian regime. I want my people to be free. I want my people to be able to choose for themselves, to be able to look around them and make decisions out of their own conscience, out of their own freedom. And so for that, we need to see a change.
Wow. You talk about Transform Iran. Could you say the same thing about Transform Gaza?
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, don't so many countries around the world need that kind of transformative power? But yes, I want the same for Gaza. I want peace in that region. I know that Israel is the apple of God's eye, and God will continue to protect and look after Israel. But all of these nations need to be able to coexist somehow. All these people need to be able to coexist, and that comes down to people in charge making the right decisions. And all we can do at this point is pray for that.
I was just recently in Israel, and some of the people who experienced the October 7th attack actually told me they would love to see peace come to the Middle East. But they said in order to achieve that, these terrorist organizations must be wiped out and the Palestinian people given the opportunity to decide their own destiny, as well as to work alongside of Israeli citizens where they're working side by side to find a peaceful coexistence. Is that from your work with Transform Iran something that you can see happening sometime in the future, or is it mired by the propaganda from Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah?
Yeah, I do think that there are people with power at play here who have only evil intent. And I understand that the position of the people you were speaking to in terms of these terrorist organizations needing to be wiped out before we can even consider a peaceful coexistence. I think there has to be truth in that. My prayer has always been peace by repentance over peace by force. So I still press into that in prayer and I pray for the leaders of Hamas, the leaders of Hezbollah, the leaders of the RGC. These are the people that God still loves, that Jesus did still die for. We mustn't lose sight of that. And if these lives can be transformed, that is going to be the key. But without that, I do struggle to see a long-term peaceful resolution, because no matter what good people try to push and make happen, if there are people with evil intent who are determined for war and unrest, then that has to be addressed. And that can't always be addressed peacefully, sadly.
What's on your heart and your mind as you look at what's happening in the world right now? Because not only is it Israel, next it could be the United States, it could be Europe, it could be Africa, where Christians, as we understand, are being pummeled and persecuted on a daily basis in places like Nigeria and so many other countries. There is a problem going on in the world right now, and people aren't really addressing it if they're protesting in the streets and not getting all the facts.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Your last point, especially not getting all the facts. There is, we are bombarded with information every day, but not necessarily facts. And we must be discerning. We must take the time and effort to dig a little and find the truth, because it's so easy for anyone to pop up on social media and create a video and look all knowledgeable and spout nonsense. And there is so much nonsense going around today. And those who don't take the time to really dig and check and discern and make sure what they're hearing is true are buying into false information. And it's creating all these pockets of these protests and all these groups that are rising up that are based on misinformation. And that is one of the greatest weapons the enemy is using today, is misinforming people and mobilizing people off the basis of misinformation. So we must engage, and the best way we can engage is to be informed, to pray, to advocate for the downtrodden, and to be a voice for the voiceless, I guess I would say.
I'm sure the Iranian regime watches you very closely, and they're saying, what are we going to do with her?
Yes, that's right. I want to be a problem for the forces of evil. So that's good. I like that. And I would encourage your listeners, it's countries like Israel, we can get alongside. We know them, we love them. Countries like Iran, we are misunderstood. And I would encourage listeners and viewers to separate the regimes of countries like Iran from the people of Iran. Very often the people pay the first and greatest price for their evil regimes. So let's be praying for the Iranian people. Let's be praying for change. Imagine the day when Iran is transformed. I believe that is on God's agenda. He's talked about in Jeremiah 49, how he wants to establish his throne there and restore the fortunes of Elam, which is modern day Iran. If Iran is transformed, think about the domino effect for the rest of that region and the world.
Well said, my friend. That's something you don't hear every day. Thank you.